The message came while I was sitting in a glass conference room pretending to care about quarterly projections. My phone buzzed once. Just once. No emoji. No explanation. One sentence that cut straight through me. We all agreed she should stay. For a second, I didn't understand what I was reading. I even checked the sender, like maybe this was a wrong number or some twisted joke that didn't land. But it was my mother's name at the top. Clear as day. I didn't shout. I didn't stand up. I didn't interrupt the meeting. Something colder took over instead. The kind of calm that only comes when a line is crossed so completely that your body stops negotiating. Before I tell you exactly how this unfolded, do me a small favor. If you're listening to this story, take a second to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Stories like this only matter when they're heard. And now, let me tell you what they did to my child. My name is Evan Hale, and my daughter Mila was 8 years old when my own parents decided she was disposable. That morning had started like any other weekday that pretends it's normal while quietly setting traps. The apartment smelled like toast and the strawberry shampoo Mila always used even though it made her hair puff out in every direction. She sat at the counter swinging her legs, her backpack already zipped with military precision. Inside were her headphones, her sketchbook, her colored pencils arranged just the way she liked them, and her stuffed fox, threadbare, missing one button eye, irreplaceable. She talked nonstop about the ocean. About dolphins. About how she hoped the hotel pool had those fountains that shoot water straight up. I smiled, nodded, and ignored the knot forming in my chest. I couldn't take the week off work. My company was pushing toward a brutal deadline, and missing it would have cost me more than just reputation. When my parents offered to take Mila with them and my sister's family on their beach vacation, I hesitated. But they'd insisted. Reassured me. Family trip. She'll be safe. She'll have fun. I wanted to believe that. At North Lake International Airport, chaos pressed in from every side. Rolling suitcases. Boarding announcements echoing off high ceilings. The smell of burnt coffee and sanitizer. I spotted my parents immediately. My mother Elaine wore a bright scarf like she wanted the whole terminal to notice her. My father Robert stood beside her, quiet and unreadable as ever. My sister Kara was already complaining about carry-on sizes, while her husband argued with an airline agent about seating upgrades. First class. Always first class. No one knelt down to Mila's level. No one asked if she was nervous. They talked about champagne and legroom like my daughter wasn't standing there clutching a stuffed fox with both hands. If she acts up, that's on you, Kara joked, laughing like it was harmless. You raised her. Everyone chuckled. I swallowed what I wanted to say. At the security checkpoint, Mila wrapped her arms around me so tight I felt her heart racing against my chest. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her backpack and pressed it into my palm. A drawing. A fox with a tiny suitcase. Hold on to this, she said seriously. So you don't forget me. I won't, I promised. I watched her disappear through the checkpoint, her small hand swallowed by my mother's grip. She turned once and waved. The fox's ear poked out of her bag like it was waving too. I told myself she was safe. I told myself family wouldn't hurt her. At work, everything felt distant, like I was watching my own life through glass. Code blurred together. Meetings dragged. I showed my coworker a photo my mother had sent, Mila smiling at the gate, missing tooth, thumbs up. Do you trust them? She asked quietly. I laughed it off. It's just a trip. In the middle of the afternoon, my phone buzzed. That message. We all agreed she should stay. I stared at it, confused more than alarmed. Stay where? Stay why? I flipped my phone face down and finished the meeting on autopilot, but something cold settled under my ribs. Hours later, sitting alone in the parking garage, I finally called them. The background noise was wrong. Wind. Laughter. Car doors slamming. Can I talk to Mila? I asked. Elaine's voice floated through, airy and unconcerned. Oh, sweetheart, she's not with us. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. What do you mean she's not with you? Robert answered, flat and final. She made a fuss. We discussed it. We decided it was best she stay behind. Stay behind. She's 8, I said. My mouth felt dry. Kara chimed in, irritated. Relax. We arranged emergency childcare. 5-star agency. You're overreacting. The line went dead. A second later, an address texted through. No apology. No explanation. I drove faster than I should have, past warehouses and flickering streetlights, my hands shaking on the wheel. The house was run down, porch light buzzing like it might die any second. Inside, my daughter sat curled on a stained couch, fox pressed to her chest, eyes swollen from crying. She ran into my arms. Did Grandma not want me because I was bad? She whispered. That question split me open. That night, after Mila finally fell asleep, I sat beside her bed staring at my phone. The message still glowed on the screen. We all agreed she should stay. And suddenly, I saw it clearly. This wasn't sudden. This was a pattern. Growing up, I had always been the one who absorbed the damage. When Kara messed up, I fixed it. When money disappeared, I replaced it. When boundaries were crossed, I stayed quiet. My parents called it maturity. Strength. What it really was training. And now they had voted on my daughter's worth the same way they'd always voted on mine. I stood in the bathroom that night staring at my reflection. Tired eyes. Jaw clenched from years of swallowing words. I walked past Mila's room again. Her fox lay beside her, one little arm sticking out from the blanket like it was reaching for safety. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If I stayed silent now, I'd be teaching her the same lesson I was taught, that family is allowed to hurt you as long as they call it love. I didn't know exactly what I would do next. But I knew I was done being the person they counted on to disappear. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on the couch listening to Mila's breathing through the cracked door of her room, counting each rise and fall like proof she was still here, still safe. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sitting on that stranger's couch, clutching her fox like it was the only thing anchoring her to the world. The message replayed in my head again and again. We all agreed she should stay. They hadn't said she misbehaved. They hadn't said there was an emergency. They said we voted. As if my daughter were an inconvenience on an agenda. As if her safety were optional. Sometime before dawn, something inside me settled. Not rage. Not grief. Something colder. Clearer. When the sun finally crept through the blinds, I stood in the kitchen staring at a sink full of dishes I didn't remember using and a counter littered with unopened mail. Past due notices. Credit card statements. Small reminders of how much of my life revolved around fixing other people's problems. I made coffee I didn't drink and opened my laptop. I didn't start with anger. I started with facts. Bank statements. Transfers. Screenshots. Old lease agreements. Text messages that began with "I hate to ask" and ended with me paying for something that was never my responsibility. I created a spreadsheet and began entering numbers slowly, carefully, like I was documenting evidence instead of memories. Reduced rent for 3 years. Emergency funds. Medical bills that were never repaid. Vacation expenses. And then, like a final insult, the charges from the Florida resort that hit my card while my daughter was being dropped off with a stranger. When the total appeared at the bottom of the sheet, my stomach dropped. It wasn't just money. It was years of being quietly used. I thought about how easily I would have called the police if a stranger had abandoned my child at an airport. How instinctive that would have been. And then I asked myself the question I had avoided my entire life. Why did my family get a level of forgiveness no one else would? By mid-morning, Mila wandered into the kitchen in her socks, fox tucked under her arm. She climbed onto a chair and started coloring without a word. I watched her for a long time, noticing how quiet she was, how careful. Children don't forget fear just because adults stop talking about it. What are you drawing? I asked gently. She held up the paper. A fox with a backpack, standing alone on a long road. Where's it going? I asked. Somewhere people don't leave it, she said, without looking up. That was it. I didn't need a dramatic plan. I needed a clean one. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I barely remembered, Julian Mercer. A lawyer a former coworker had once described as politely ruthless. My finger hovered over the call button for only a second. Mercer Law, he answered. I need help, I said. Not with family drama. With facts. Come by this afternoon, he replied. Bring everything. His office was glass and steel and smelled faintly of coffee and printer toner. Julian didn't interrupt while I talked. He flipped through documents without expression, pausing only to ask dates, amounts, signatures. When I finished, he closed the folder neatly. You don't have a family problem, he said calmly. You have a financial pattern disguised as loyalty. He slid a blank template across the desk. We'll start with a demand letter. Clean. Precise. Undeniable. That night, after Mila fell asleep on the couch with her fox tucked under her chin, I opened my laptop again. The cursor blinked on an email draft titled Outstanding Balances. I typed slowly. Every amount. Every date. Every receipt. I attached screenshots. Bank statements. The childcare invoice from the night they left Mila behind. Before hitting send, I paused. This wasn't just an email. It was a line drawn where I'd never drawn one before. I thought about Mila's whisper in that stranger's living room. Was I bad? I clicked send. The silence afterward felt heavy, like the moment after pulling a fire alarm when the building hasn't realized it's supposed to panic yet. The panic came the next evening. My phone lit up with a video call. I answered. Their faces filled the screen, sunburned, smiling too brightly, turquoise pool water behind them. Plastic cups with umbrellas. My money funding their relaxation. Elaine didn't bother softening her voice. What is this nonsense you sent? Kara laughed sharply. A bill? Seriously? This is pathetic. I kept my voice level. Those numbers represent years of unpaid obligations. Family doesn't keep score, Elaine snapped. Family doesn't abandon an 8-year-old at an airport, I replied. The screen went quiet. Then Kara rolled her eyes. Stop using Mila as leverage. You're turning her against us. I'm teaching her what safe people look like, I said. I ended the call. The messages came immediately. Accusations. Guilt. Threats disguised as concern. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded everything to Julian. His response was short. Good. Don't engage. At work the next day, my coworker Nina took one look at me and said, they're escalating, aren't they? I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked, do you want to keep bleeding slowly, or take one clean hit and stop? That afternoon, Julian called me back into his office. He slid a second document across the desk, more formal, more severe. It referenced statutes I didn't like seeing attached to my family's names. Child endangerment. Financial exploitation. If they keep pushing, Julian said, this can escalate. But we can also offer them a way to settle quietly. I don't want Mila dragged into interviews, I said immediately. Then this letter will be strong enough to scare them, but structured to keep her out of it unless they force your hand. We sent it that night. The next morning, the social media posts vanished. The family group chat went silent. My phone, once vibrating nonstop, sat still. 3 days later, a delivery confirmation popped up. The letter had been signed for. Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. 3 sharp chimes. I looked through the peephole. Elaine. Robert. Kara. Her husband. A united front. Go to your room, I told Mila gently. Put your music on. I opened the door just enough to block the frame. Sweetheart, Elaine said, sugar thick in her voice. Let us come in. We'll talk here, I replied. You're embarrassing us, Robert said. Kara raised her phone, already recording. Let's show everyone how you treat your family. Leaving my daughter alone wasn't love, I said quietly. Elaine's face tightened. If you don't stop this, you won't have a family anymore. I felt nothing break inside me. Maybe that's the most honest thing you've ever said, I replied. I closed the door. The latch clicked loud in the quiet hallway. Inside, Mila peeked out from her room. They're not coming in, she asked. No, I said softly. This is our home. As their footsteps faded, I understood something with absolute clarity. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was consequence. And they were just beginning to understand what that meant. The silence after I closed the door didn't feel empty. It felt heavy, like the air right before a storm finally breaks. For years, silence had meant I'd given in. It meant I'd swallowed another slight, paid another bill, agreed to another version of reality that kept everyone comfortable except me. This silence was different. This one belonged to me. Mila didn't come out of her room for a while. I could hear her music playing softly, a loop tune she always put on when she needed to feel safe. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the door, replaying every word my parents and sister had thrown at me. None of it surprised me anymore. What surprised me was how little it hurt. That evening, my phone rang again. This time it was my father. Just his name on the screen. No family group. No audience. I answered. Evan, he said, voice low. This has gone far enough. I waited. You've embarrassed your mother, he continued. Your sister is falling apart. People are asking questions. Good, I said quietly. He inhaled sharply. We can fix this. You withdraw the letters. We forget the money. We move on. I leaned back in my chair, looking toward Mila's closed door. You didn't forget my daughter when you left her behind. Why should I forget that? She wasn't in danger, he snapped. She thought she was, I replied. And that's what matters. Silence stretched between us. You've always been dramatic, he said finally. Always turning small things into moral crusades. I almost laughed. You left my 8-year-old alone with strangers and voted on it like a committee decision. You're punishing all of us for one mistake. No, I said evenly. I'm refusing to cover for it. The call ended without goodbye. The next morning, Mila's school called. Her teacher asked if we could talk privately. She explained gently that Mila had been unusually quiet. That she'd asked whether adults were allowed to leave children behind if they were bad. I had to sit down. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, not with anger, but with something heavier. Resolve. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't about pride. This was about undoing a lie before it took root in my daughter's bones. That afternoon, Julian called. They want to settle, he said. Partially. What does that mean? It means excuses. It means half payments. It means conditions. No, I said immediately. Clean or nothing. He paused. That may push them. Then let them be pushed. The next move didn't come from lawyers. It came from social media. Kara posted a photo of a cocktail by the pool with a caption about how money changes people, but character reveals itself. Elaine commented underneath about grace and forgiveness during family trials. Within hours, distant relatives started messaging me. What's going on? Why are you doing this to your parents? Family should stay private. No one asked about Mila. No one asked why an 8-year-old came home asking if she was bad. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Julian. Good, he replied. They're building our case for us. That night, after Mila fell asleep beside me on the couch, I drafted something I'd never dared to write before. Not an accusation. A record. I wrote down every moment I could remember when my needs were dismissed in favor of my sisters. Every time I was told to be understanding. To be patient. To be strong. And then I wrote what they'd done to Mila. Not emotionally. Factually. Dates. Times. Words. Reading it back felt like reading someone else's life. Someone who had been trained to disappear. The following day, Julian sent the final version of the settlement proposal. It was airtight. Repayment schedule. Admissions without emotion. A clause that ended all future financial access to me. Another that barred them from contacting Mila without my consent. This is your off-ramp, Julian told me. They take it, or this goes public in ways they can't control. That evening, the call came. Kara was crying. Not softly. Loudly. You're destroying us, she said. I admitted it. I used your card. We didn't pay rent. I said she should stay. What more do you want? I closed my eyes. I want accountability, I said. And distance. You think you're better than us now? No, I said. I think I finally stopped letting you hurt us. Elaine took the phone. Her voice was thin. If you do this, you won't be my son anymore. I waited for the familiar ache. It didn't come. Then maybe we should stop pretending I ever was, I replied. The call ended. 2 days later, an email arrived. Settlement agreement, signed. I read it 3 times to be sure. Initial payment confirmed. Monthly installments scheduled. All conditions accepted. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like release. The payments started on time. Every month. No messages attached. No guilt layered in. Just numbers moving from one account to another like overdue truths. The noise faded. Relatives stopped calling. Kara stopped posting. Elaine stopped messaging. My life got quieter in ways I hadn't known were possible. Mila started laughing again. The guarded look in her eyes softened. She stopped drawing foxes with suitcases and started drawing houses. Roots. Trees. One evening, while we sat on the balcony watching planes blink across the sky, she asked me a question. Daddy, she said, if someone loves you, they don't vote you away, right? No, I said, pulling her close. They don't. She nodded like she was filing that truth somewhere safe. Weeks later, my father sent one last email. It wasn't an apology. It was an explanation. A carefully worded attempt to feel reasonable. I didn't respond. Some doors don't need to be slammed. They just need to stay closed. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was standing outside. The first month after the agreement felt unreal, like walking through a city after a storm where everything looks the same but sounds different. Quieter. Cleaner. I kept expecting the noise to come back, the calls, the guilt, the sudden emergencies, but it didn't. The payments arrived on the same date each month, exact to the dollar, no messages attached. Just numbers moving from their account to mine like a silent acknowledgement of everything they never wanted to admit out loud. Mila noticed the change before I did. She started sleeping through the night again. The dark circles under her eyes faded. She stopped flinching when the phone rang. One morning, while I was making breakfast, she asked if we could leave her fox at home instead of carrying it everywhere. I didn't comment on it, but my chest tightened in a good way. It meant she felt safe enough to put it down. Life slowed into something steadier. I cut back on overtime at work now that the rental income from the Aurora house was finally coming in from tenants who actually paid. Real tenants. People who didn't treat my property like a family entitlement. Evenings became ours. Homework at the table. Simple dinners. Walks around the block where Mila told me about her day in pieces instead of fragments. One night, while we were washing dishes together, she said something that stopped me cold. Daddy, she said carefully, I know now it wasn't because I was bad. I turned off the faucet. What wasn't? I asked. The airport, she said. They left me because of them. Not me. I crouched down so we were eye to eye. That's right, I said. None of that was your fault. Ever. She nodded slowly, like she was locking that truth into place. A week later, I got a message from an unfamiliar number. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. She wrote that she'd been thinking a lot. That she never meant for things to go this far. That families make mistakes. That forgiveness matters more than money. She ended by asking if she could see Mila, just once, privately, to explain. The old reflex stirred, the one trained into me since childhood. The one that said be reasonable, be gentle, don't escalate. But then I remembered Mila's voice in that stranger's living room. Was I bad? And I remembered the teacher's call. The quiet fear that had wrapped itself around my daughter without my permission. I typed back slowly. When Mila is old enough to decide for herself, she can choose who she sees. My job right now is to protect her sense of safety. That's not negotiable. I sent it. The reply came almost immediately, sharp and wounded. She accused me of poisoning my daughter, of tearing the family apart, of rewriting history. I didn't respond. Some conversations aren't meant to continue. They're meant to end. Months passed. The extended family adjusted to a new narrative. Without my silence to cushion things, the truth had a way of surfacing on its own. Kara took a full-time job. Her husband picked up extra shifts. My parents stopped posting about family. Unity and blessings. The cracks were still there, but they were no longer mine to fill. Occasionally, I heard things secondhand. Complaints about how cold I'd become. How I'd changed. How money had gotten to my head. I didn't correct anyone. The people who needed to know already did. One afternoon, Mila brought home a drawing from school. It was a fox again, but this time it was standing in front of a small house with two shadows inside. No suitcase. No road. It's home, she said proudly. And it's staying. I hung it on the fridge. There were moments, of course, when grief still crept in. Not for what I'd lost, but for what never really existed. The family I thought I had. The version of my parents who would have protected my child instinctively, without discussion, without votes. I let myself feel that grief without letting it steer me. Healing isn't about pretending something didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let the hurt decide your future. One evening, while Mila was asleep, I sat alone on the balcony watching planes blink across the sky. I thought about how close I'd come to doing nothing. To smoothing things over. To accepting apologies that were really just strategies to keep everything the same. I thought about how easily this could have become another story she carried into adulthood, a quiet shame she never deserved. I understood something then that I wish I'd learned earlier. Love that requires silence is not love. Family that survives on sacrifice from only one person is not family. And peace bought at a child's expense is not peace at all. I didn't go too far I went exactly far enough. Today, our life is simple. Not perfect. But honest. Mila laughs easily. I breathe more freely. The house feels like ours in a way it never did before. We are not waiting for permission to matter. If there is one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this: if someone hurts your child and asks you to stay quiet for the sake of harmony, they are asking you to trade your child's safety for their comfort. And that is a trade you never have to make. If this story meant something to you, support it by subscribing and telling me in the comments where you're listening from. Your presence helps stories like this reach people who need them.